My name is Jenna. Yesterday, something inside me finally cracked wide open. It was just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. My spouse kissed me goodbye, said they were heading to the store for groceries, and promised they wouldn't be long. The door clicked shut, and suddenly, the house felt enormous and terribly, terribly quiet. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was a heavy, screaming silence. All the walls I'd built up over the past year and a half, the walls holding back this ocean of grief and guilt, they just crumbled. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The loneliness was suffocating. I sank down onto the floor right there in the hallway, my back against the cool wall, and I just cried. Not gentle tears, but huge, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep inside my chest, a place that still felt raw and broken. And in that moment of complete despair, I felt this overwhelming need to talk to him. To Michael. My best friend. My ex. The one person who understood a part of me that sometimes feels lost now. So, I grabbed a notebook and a pen, and I started writing. A letter I can never send. A letter filled with all the things I wish I could say, all the apologies, all the questions, all the pain. I poured it all out onto those pages, and then I shared it here. Because I couldn't hold it in anymore, let me tell you about Michael. We met way back in 2011. There was an instant connection, like finding a piece of yourself you didn't know was missing. We became inseparable. We laughed together, dreamed together, faced the world together. We dated for about 3 years, until sometime in 2014. And honestly, it just stopped working. I won't go into the gritty details of why it ended. That feels private, and more than that, it feels disrespectful to Michael's memory to air that laundry now. What matters is this: neither of us were perfect angels. We were young, figuring ourselves out, and sometimes we hurt each other. There were moments of real betrayal, deep hurts that left scars. It got to a point where I felt like I was drowning, and the only way I could save myself was to end the relationship. So, I did. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but here's the complicated part: we couldn't let each other go completely. We tried so hard to be friends. Best friends. We genuinely cared about each other deeply, beneath all the romantic history and the pain. We had shared so much life. So, we stayed in each other's orbits. Some days, even weeks or months, it felt okay. Almost normal. We'd talk about movies, share funny memes, catch up about work, just like old times. It felt comforting, familiar. But then, it would happen. The tension would build. The old wounds would start to ache. And we'd fight. Oh, how we'd fight. Loud, messy, painful arguments that left us both exhausted and bruised inside. It was like walking on a frozen lake that was always on the verge of cracking. You never knew when the ice would give way beneath you. The core of almost every fight was the same thing, echoing over and over like a broken record. Michael wanted me back. He wanted us to try again. He believed, truly believed, that if we just gave it another shot, things could be different. He'd pour his heart out, telling me how much he still loved me, how he couldn't imagine his life without me as his partner. Hearing that hurt so much. Because my answer, every single time, was no. A gentle no, a firm no, a tearful no, but always no. Seeing the hope fade from his eyes each time I said it, it was like watching a light go out. It crushed him. It made him angry, then deeply sad, then withdrawn. He'd spiral down into this dark place. After a while, the storm would pass. He'd come back, quieter, maybe a little distant. He'd tell me, sometimes explicitly, sometimes just through his actions, that losing me completely as a friend was even worse than the pain of wanting more. That even this messy, painful friendship was better than nothing. So, we'd cautiously rebuild the bridge. We'd pretend the fight hadn't happened, or we'd awkwardly skirt around it. We'd go back to being just friends. But the ache was always there, a constant hum in the background. That unrequited love, that longing in him, it was a heavy shadow over our friendship. I felt it constantly. I worried about it constantly. Many times, I sat him down and asked him, pleaded with him, Michael, is this friendship hurting you more than helping? Would it be easier for you, healthier for you, if we just stopped? If we said goodbye for good? I'd miss you terribly, you know I would. But if it would help you move on, find happiness, maybe we should. And every single time, without fail, he would look me straight in the eye and say, no. Please, don't go. I need you in my life. I can handle just being friends. I want to be your friend. He promised me he could manage the pain. He promised me the friendship was worth it. So, I stayed. I stayed because I loved him as a friend, and I stayed because he asked me to. I stayed hoping that one day, the ache would finally fade for him. Then came 2019. A year that started like any other, but ended in a way that shattered my world forever. I found out that Michael was gone. He had died from a gunshot wound to the head. The news hit me like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that knocked the air right out of me. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the floor was tilting beneath me. And then I remembered the letter. Just days before, he had handed me a handwritten letter. It was folded neatly, his familiar scrawl on the envelope. He'd said it was important. When I opened it later, I saw it was a goodbye letter. A final farewell. He apologized. Profusely. For everything he felt he'd ever done to hurt me. He wrote about regrets, about wishing things had been different. He told me he cared about me deeply and was sorry for the pain he caused. Looking back now, the signs were screaming at me. I just didn't see them clearly then. He hadn't been himself for weeks leading up to it. He was quieter, withdrawn, like a ghost of the vibrant, sometimes infuriatingly passionate man I knew. He seemed melancholy, detached, floating through life without really connecting. He was acting strangely distant, even for us after a fight. He gave me several notes in the days before, little things, messages that felt odd but I brushed off as him just being sentimental or maybe feeling guilty after an argument. That final letter, the one he handed me, he called it a farewell to our friendship. That's what he said. He framed it as him finally accepting that he couldn't be just my friend anymore, that the pain was too much, and he needed to walk away for good. My heart sank when I read it, but honestly, my first thought wasn't suicide. My first thought was anger mixed with sadness. I thought, here we go again. Another fight ending with him cutting me off because I won't date him. It felt like the same painful pattern we'd been stuck in for years. I figured he was upset, maybe even furious with me, and this was his way of punishing me or protecting himself. I thought he just needed space, again, and that eventually, like always, he'd come back. I was wrong. So terribly, tragically wrong. The day it happened, he called me. Twice. I remember seeing his name flash on my phone screen. I was lying in bed, drifting in that hazy space between sleep and waking. The first call, I mumbled, I'll call him back later, and rolled over. The second call, maybe 10 minutes later, I squinted at the screen, thought, it's Michael. Probably wants to talk about the letter. I'm too tired for this right now. I'll call him when I'm properly awake. So, I silenced the phone and went back to sleep. Later, I told myself. I'll deal with it later. But later never came. By the time I woke up properly, stretched, and thought about calling him back, he was already gone. That simple decision to sleep, that ordinary moment of tiredness, it haunts me every single day. What if I had just picked up? What if I had heard his voice? Could I have heard the desperation? Could I have said something, anything, to change what happened? The weight of that missed connection is crushing that I and the awful, confusing aftermath. I called his aunt. I was desperate for answers, for any shred of understanding. She was kind but firm. She told me the police believed it was an accident. An accidental, self-inflicted gunshot. She said it quickly, almost like she was reciting a line she'd been told to say. But how? How could they possibly know it was an accident? The questions screamed in my head. He kept his gun locked away in a safe. He was always careful about that. He must have deliberately unlocked that safe. He must have deliberately taken the gun out. That wasn't an accident. That was a choice. I took a picture of the heartbreaking farewell note he gave me and sent it to his aunt. Her response was immediate and urgent. Please, Jenna, please don't show this to anyone. Please keep this quiet. Her voice trembled. She explained, her words heavy with sorrow, that their family had been scarred by too much tragedy already. Too many suicides. His own mother, she had died by suicide when Michael was much younger. It devastated him. He carried that grief like a millstone around his neck his whole life. And the gun, oh God, the gun. His grandfather had also died by suicide. And he used the same gun that Michael's mother later used to end her own life. That same, terrible gun. It was passed down, or maybe just kept, like a cursed heirloom. And it ended up with Michael. He kept it locked in that safe. I remember begging him, pleading with him, years ago, Michael, please, get rid of that thing. It feels evil. It feels like it carries death. He'd just shake his head, his expression stubborn and sad. It's just a gun, Jenna, he'd say. It's history. I know how to handle it. He refused to let it go. And in the end, that same gun, the one that took his grandfather and his mother, it took him too. Whether it was truly a terrible accident, like his aunt desperately wanted to believe, or something intentional shrouded in that family's painful history, I will never know for sure. That unknown is its own special kind of torture. It leaves the door wide open for the guilt to flood in. It's been 1.5 years since that day. 18 months. 540-something days of carrying this crushing weight. I haven't been myself since. I feel fractured, like a piece of china glued back together but still fragile, the cracks clearly visible. The guilt is my constant companion. It wakes me up in the quiet hours before dawn. It sits with me while I drink my morning coffee. It follows me through my workday like a shadow. It whispers to me when I try to fall asleep, this is your fault. I blame myself relentlessly, mercilessly. Could I have stopped this? Should I have seen the signs clearer? Should I have pushed harder for him to get help? Should I have been a better friend? The what-ifs are a never-ending loop in my mind, a torturous playlist I can't turn off. What if I had answered those 2 phone calls that final day? What would he have said? Could I have heard the despair in his voice? Could I have talked him down, called for help, raced over there? Could those 5 minutes of conversation have saved his life? What if I had just said yes? What if I had caved in and agreed to try dating him again, even if I wasn't sure? Would being his girlfriend have given me more influence? Could I have convinced him, finally, to get rid of that awful, cursed gun? He listened to me more when we were together. He trusted my judgment more. Maybe if I had agreed, even temporarily, I could have gotten him to surrender it. Please, Michael, for me. For us. Get rid of it. Would he have listened then? What if I had been more forceful years earlier? What if I had staged an intervention about the gun? What if I had contacted his aunt then, expressed my fears? What if I had insisted he see a therapist? Really insisted, not just suggested it gently. What if I had recognized the depth of his mother's suicide on him? Did I truly understand how broken he was inside by that loss? I feel like there were so many points where I could have intervened. So many moments where a different choice, a different word, a different action from me could have started a ripple effect, a butterfly effect, that changed the course of everything. That maybe, just maybe, could have saved him. But I didn't. I made the choices I made. I lived the life I lived. And now, I can't go back. I can't rewind time. I can't try a different path. It's done. It's final. That helplessness is its own agony, and then there's the selfishness. Oh, the guilt tells me I was incredibly selfish. How could I stay friends with him knowing he was still deeply in love with me? Knowing my presence caused him such pain? Did I keep him trapped in that cycle of hope and despair by staying close? Was my need for his friendship, my own comfort in having him in my life, more important than his chance to truly heal and move on? I wrestle with this constantly. I've always stayed friends with some of my exes. It felt natural to me. We shared important parts of our lives. Why throw that away if we could be respectful adults? My other exes moved on. They found new partners, built new lives. I moved on. I found love again. I got married. I have a good life. I never believed in burning bridges unless someone was truly toxic or abusive. Michael wasn't toxic. He was my friend. My best friend for so long. He knew me in ways few others ever have. And honestly, I did try to give him space. Several times, after particularly bad fights where it was clear my presence was destroying him, I stepped back. 4 weeks. Sometimes months. I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I tried to disappear to give him the chance to heal without me. But he always came back. He'd call, or text, or show up. He'd tell me he was over it. He'd say he'd moved on. He'd promise he was perfectly fine with just being platonic best friends again. He'd act like his usual, charming self. He'd talk about other dates, other interests. He seemed genuine. He seemed okay. So, I'd believe him. I'd let the guard down. I'd let him back into my life. And the cycle would slowly start again. How was I supposed to know this time was different? How was I supposed to know the darkness was that deep? But yesterday, sitting on that hallway floor, drowning in grief after my spouse left for groceries, something shifted. A tiny, fragile spark of, not hope, maybe, but resolve. For the first time since Michael died, I picked up my phone, not to write another unsent letter, but to make a real call. I found a therapist who specializes in grief and trauma. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. My voice trembled when I spoke. But I did it. I made an appointment. The therapist sounded kind. She told me she could help. Help me carry this unbearable weight of grief. Help me untangle the suffocating knot of guilt. Help me learn ways to cope, to breathe, to maybe even start healing. She acknowledged the mountain I feel like I have to climb, but she assured me we could start climbing it together. This feels terrifying. It feels impossible. But I'm finally starting the journey. My plan is simple, but it feels huge. Go to therapy. Every week. Show up. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Find self-help books recommended by my therapist or others who understand this pain. Read them, absorb them, try the strategies. Search online for resources, support groups, forums, articles about complicated grief, survivor's guilt. Learn everything I can about how to navigate this storm inside me. I know I can't do this completely alone. So, if anyone listening has walked a similar path, if anyone has felt this crushing weight of guilt after a loss, if you found resources, strategies, books, or even just words of wisdom that helped you, please, reach out. Send me a message. Share your insight. Your guidance could be a lifeline that I am proud of myself for making that call. Truly proud. I knew, deep down, I needed professional help almost immediately after Michael died. But for a year and a half, I ran. I hid. I procrastinated. I made excuses. I told myself I was managing. I told myself I was getting by. I told myself the pain would lessen on its own with time. But the truth is, I was scared. I didn't want to admit how badly I was spiraling. I didn't want to face the profound depth of my depression. Admitting I needed help felt like admitting defeat, like admitting I was broken beyond repair. My depression over losing Michael, over the guilt, over the what-ifs, it's profound. It's a heavy, dark cloak I wear every single day. I've become an expert at pretending. When my spouse is home, when I'm with friends, when I'm at work, I smile. I laugh. I make conversation. I act like everything is perfectly fine. But the moment I'm alone? The moment my spouse walks out the door to run an errand, or goes into another room. That's when the mask slips. That's when the tears come. They come silently, sometimes. Or they come in great, heaving sobs that shake my whole body. I cry for Michael, the friend I loved, the life lost too soon. I cry for the guilt that eats at me. I cry for the conversations we'll never have, the forgiveness I can never seek, the peace I can never give him. I cry for the sheer, overwhelming unfairness of it all. I cry because I miss him, terribly, every single day. Now, I'm choosing a different path. I'm choosing to talk. Not just into the void of a letter, but to a professional. To someone trained to help people like me find their way out of the darkness. I'm choosing to seek tools, strategies, understanding. I'm choosing to fight for myself, for my own mental health, for my future. I need to heal. Not just for me, but for my spouse, for my own life that I deserve to live fully, not just endure. I have to try. I owe it to Michael's memory to not let his death destroy me too. I owe it to myself that I desperately need to believe that relief is possible. That this suffocating grief, this relentless guilt, can ever loosen its grip. That the sharp, stabbing pain will one day become a duller ache. That I will be able to think of Michael without feeling like I'm being torn apart. That I will be able to remember the good times, the laughter, the friendship, without the shadow of his end darkening everything. I need to believe healing is real, even if it's slow, even if it's messy, even if the scars never fully fade. I have to hold on to that tiny spark of belief. Because Michael deserved peace. He deserved a life free from the pain he carried. And maybe, just maybe, after carrying this burden for so long, I deserve to find a measure of peace too. Not to forget him, never that, but to live without the constant weight of blame crushing me. To find a way to honor his memory without being destroyed by it. That's the hope I'm clinging to as I walk into that therapist's office for the first time. It's a fragile hope, but it's mine, and I'm holding it tight.